Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Mia Sin. So, I actually realized that a lot of people really enjoy when I make those either illegal misplays or rulings that people actually don't know, or tips to help you improve with your gameplay. So, I figured, you know what? Why not make another one? And this one is actually pretty interesting. A lot of aspects that I'm covering in this video, maybe some things that people don't already know. So, hopefully, you learn a thing or two here. And of course, before you start, friendly reminder to like and subscribe. Really does motivate me a lot to keep making videos like these. I swear it does. Anyways, so this tip number one is going to be how to kind of use your floodgates in an intelligent, like in a smart way, because a lot of people wouldn't really, I guess, be aware of the existence of certain cards and interactions. So I see that for the most part, when people have proactive floodgates, and I say proactive floodgates that don't necessarily need to be used on draw phase or standby, like anti-spell, that just doesn't count. Anti-spell, of course, you're always going to shotgun it as soon as you can, but let's just say Imperial Order, Summon Limit, there can only be one Unending Rivalry Gozen match. These floodgates are, you should actually try to flip them as soon as possible. Yeah, sure, it looks like you can actually catch your opponent off guard if you only flip them the moment they are actually going to make your opponent lose advantage, but there are significant drawbacks to that, and as you actually might have seen from the remote duel, even Virtual World has the potential to play a card like Denko Seka, even though I don't feel like the deck should play it, but it can. So if your hand is good, well, congratulations, I guess this is gonna get you there, but if it's not, well, it's just gonna be the discard for King Long. It's not the end of the world. And against a deck like Pendulums, it's actually renowned to actually play Denko Seka. So if you are playing Floodgates in your deck, make sure you actually flip it on draw phase or standby, because as you can see, not preemptively flipping my Unending Nightmare made me lose the game completely, entirely, whereas if I actually flipped it on standby, I would have been able to pop the scales one by one, make him not be able to Pendulum Summon, not use the effect of the skill effect of Endymion, and I actually would have avoided all of that. So you see how just flipping a card before the situation gets tricky is actually what makes the difference. It's kind of, again, I know I keep repeating the same mistake, the same thing, but a lot of people, they don't really respect the small details like that. It's kind of like when you're running a 100-meter dash, even the super small details, like to improve by 5 milliseconds, actually matters like crazy, because that's actually huge when you get to high level of competition. That's pretty much like the difference between Johan Blake and Usain Bolt, and if someone ever beats Usain Bolt by even 2 milliseconds, he's already a god, even if you can actually just get to his level. So yeah, that's just what I'm going to try to focus on, just the very small details. So that's it for tip number one. Let's get into tip number two. Now, tip number two is actually a tiny bit different, because it's still on the same thing of wanting to flip them on draw phase, standby, but I'm actually going to be extrapolating a bit more, because it's not just for floodgates this time, and a lot of people actually don't really know what, let's just say, okay, put it that way, if I say attempting to enter battle phase, what is the first thing you actually think of? Evenly matched, right? Well, let me tell you something. There's actually other cards that you have to be scared of, and this card right there, Antimagic Arrows, is extremely terrifying and have seen a lot of play in the past, so I'm gonna read it for you. At the start of the battle phase, for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, neither player can activate spell or traps or their effects, and also, neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. So if you have all of your floodgates and Solemn Judgment and, everything, even to negate Denko Seka, and you're feeling super confident and you're like, come at me, I'm not really scared of you, your opponent might actually take you by surprise by not actually going for the evenly, but by going for anti-magic arrows instead, and just because you didn't flip your floodgates on end of main phase, well, you lose the game, because now your opponent can't do anything about it. So, now you can't do anything about him comboing off on main phase 2, destroying all of your cards, etc. And another thing that I want to say, let's just say you had IP Masquerena. You know that it can only be used to link summon during the main phase, so what if your opponent actually tries to go into battle phase? Are you going to Masquerena first, like at the end of the main phase, or are you going to be like, whatever, I think you're bluffing, you probably have nothing, or you have like an evenly but it won't affect me too much? but the thing is, they might actually summon a Gizmek on battle phase and jump over your IP Masquerena, and then, well, you can't really link summon anymore, so that's dumb. That's just a dumb way to lose, but, you know, you could have avoided it if you were actually aware of that. So just a friendly reminder that when someone says attempting to enter battle phase, it can mean one of these three cards. It's not necessarily just evenly matched. And I actually want to add something else to that, is that officially speaking, following the actual rules of Yu-Gi-Oh!, there's nothing that forces you to say attempting to enter battle phase. According to the rules, you can just say attempting to leave main phase 1, and that's actually enough. You don't have to tell your opponent, okay, I'm going into battle phase or I'm going into end phase, because your opponent has to be like, okay, you're trying to exit the phase, I have to do that, but he doesn't know if you're going to battle or end phase, so it might actually screw them over a tiny bit. So you can use that psychological aspect of the game in order to trick them into misplaying, and then all of a sudden, even if you didn't have the cards to win, or if your opponent had the cards to win, you can make a comeback. So again, that's it for tip number 2. Let's get into tip number 3. Alright, this tip is actually not really huge, so I'm not going to cover it too much, but it's just, again, another friendly reminder that if someone uses a card like Dragma Punishment, like your opponent, I just want you to know that if you use something like a Book of Moon, Forbidden Droplet, or even just destroy your own card without even letting your opponent destroy you, you can actually prevent them from even sending the card from the extra deck to the graveyard. And the reason why that matters is because Elder Entity Entis is the card that usually they try to send, and then they would actually try to go like to another card. So actually trying to dodge the target is the best way to protect your other cards. So again, it's just a very small tip, but for Virtual World, there's Virtual World Chuche. They usually destroy their own monsters, and then there's I don't know, so many possibilities. So again, it's just something very, very small. Most people already knew that, but let's get into my favorite tip, which is tip number 4. Alright, to all my Cyber Dragon fans, this one is for you. As you can see, my opponent is playing Eldritch. He has a really respectable hand, huh? Imperial Order, Scale Drain, Conquistador, and Elixir of Scarlet Sanguine. But don't worry, I'm gonna win this game. Of course I am. And also, I'm going to be completely safe from Jewel and Logbird. Now, you might be like, how do you actually play through Jewel and Logbird with this? Well, again, don't worry, I'm actually going to show you, and I'll tell you right now that I'm going to get significant, like a lot of searches, a huge amount of searches, despite this Jewel and Logbird being in play, and the reason for that is because in Yu-Gi-Oh! You actually have to learn how to abuse loopholes, and Jewel and Logbird has one very small flaw that makes it, you know, like you can actually play around it. Just like Salamangrate used Salamangrate Circle in the draw phase to play around the Jewel and Logbird, Jewel and Logbird cannot be used during the draw phase, so in other words, if you have search cards that can actually be triggered on draw phase, well, that's one way to actually play around it, or if you can search during your opponent's turn. So right now, I'm only getting one search on my own turn, so again, that's another deck building thing. Then my opponent is going end phase, you know, Eldritch, whatever, doesn't really do too much. Now I'm going to try to banish the Eldritch Dragoon Lord. He actually is trying to respond with Conquistador to pop himself, so the card actually won't get banished, and I will be responding with Cybernetic Overflow, and to my own Overflow, I'm gonna go Chainlink 10 billion to go Unending Nightmare. So look at this very carefully, huh? I went Dino-Miscus to discard Hurts, and I destroyed my own Overflow with Unending Nightmare. In other words, I'm getting 2 searches in one chain link, and they're both optional if effects, meaning that I can actually organize them in any chain I want to. So not only can I make Overflow in chain link 1 and Hurts in chain link 2 in order to actually get the good search, which is Overflow, because Hurts only gets you a Cyber Dragon, you know, from your deck to your hand, which isn't that great. But yeah, no, I really can get the most out of what I have. So Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, I get double searches, absolute insanity. My opponent can't duel me at all, which is really, really cool. And then my opponent, whatever, is going to summon these 2 monsters. Even if I use that on his turn, he probably wouldn't have dueled me on his turn because then it affects him as well, so he can't go Cursed Outland. Again, another thing that you can actually keep in mind. And if you have another search card, well, that search card, you can use it maybe, I don't know, on main phase, end phase, something like that. Again, this Jewel and Logbird won't do anything. And again, I'm going to get even more searches next turn. So on the draw phase, I'm going to use the Overflow and then Unending Nightmare on myself, pop the 2 back row. You can't really do anything about it. I mean, this Imperial Order just wasn't doing anything since I never really had any spell cards, but now that I cleared the board, I can finally go Rampage. Just look at this, man. I searched Cyberload and Emergency completely under the effect of Joel, and by the time he finally jolts me, it doesn't matter since I have every single bit of resource I needed. So I was able to clear like multiple back row and attack for game, and this is the reason why Cyber Dragon Traps is definitely a meta deck. It is a meta deck, by the way. It's not like an opinion. This deck really is a tier 1 strategy. So the fact that it actually beats the control deck so well going second and actually grinds with VFD and stuff with trap cards is absolute insanity. So that's pretty much it for tip number 4, which was my favorite. Let's go into tip number 5. Alright, so Red Eyes Dragoon, how do you actually beat the card? A lot of people would actually really misplay with against Dragoon, and they actually would kind of, I don't know, like maybe try to hope that their opponents are really bad at the game, but what if they actually don't suck? In this situation, would you actually try to stall out the opponent or try to bait him by going special summon Cyber Dragon and then, you know, summon the fear, make Seeger, jump over? That's not the best idea because all you have is just that and you can't really do another push. So it's not the best, but there might be a way you still win even if your opponent has Dragoon and just some whatever. Let's just say he doesn't have anything else. And the other correct thing is also not to summon any monsters for no reason. So it's really just you really just have to wait and let him attack you every single turn, like twice. You actually have 2 turns before you die, unless you use a card that he can actually negate, because then Dragoon would jump to 4k, and then the second battle phase would be game for you. And you can't really stall, again, by setting monsters. That's not a valid thing. So when you're against a Dragoon that you know you don't have the resources to out yet, you have to just keep passing turn again and again. So now my opponent is only attacking me for 3k. It's not the end of the world, but this time, since I actually was able to get another card, I finally have the resource to out the Dragoon. Now you might be wondering, well, how do you do that if the opponent is a really good player and times his negates really well? But don't worry, I definitely do have it. So I'm gonna go special and then normal core, normal special fear, sorry, and my opponent won't be negating the fear, and the reason for that is because if he does negate it, he loses a card, Dragoon goes to 4k attack, and then I can make a Seeger with these 2 leftover monsters, jump over the Dragoon, and that's actually a +1 for me. So he's actually going to be really smart. Well, and by the way, when I say he, I mean myself, because I'm the opponent. I'm actually going to be contact fusing for 3 for Chimera Tech Fortress, which has 3k. And since, again, just like I said, I didn't use an effect for no reason, this Dragoon's attack never got boosted. So I actually have the stats to crash with the Dragoon, and all of a sudden, I don't have to deal with the most annoying floodgate in the entire freaking game. So I can set overflow, still have a follow-up, and then probably win from there. I have cored my graveyard, so the game is pretty much in my favor. So that's it. That's all I had to say, man, for this beautiful tip video or advice or whatever. If you guys have any comments or feedback, whatever, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe because it motivates me a lot to keep making videos like these, and that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.